It feels like, especially if you look at metal music, that it has been progressing in one way. And then I don't know when, but at some point in the past 10, 20 years, it has exploded in every direction. So some things that are just like, there's been a ton of fusion of genres, like for example, you did. And there has also been a lot of bands that just are revival bands. And some of them are super, super successful. Like for example, I don't know, Steel Panther, Ghost, all of these bands that they do old stuff, or even like crossover trash bands that, you know, I really like, but like Municipal Waste and stuff, like they are doing things like DRI were doing in the 90s and stuff like that. So it's really, I don't know why this explosion happened, but it's like we had this explosion in every direction.
This whole thing about revival, it's also what we are seeing with Synthwave, by the way. And I think it all comes from this nostalgia we all have from, you know, the childhood memories and the sort of things. It's very interesting how specifically now I feel like nostalgia plays such a big part in culture in general. It's interesting.
Yeah, that's right. And actually, I mean, it's good that you mentioned that. I wanted to ask you about it because, yeah, of course, there's synthwave, but even, for example, vaporwave is some kind of nostalgia, but to a much more recent period. Mm-hmm. And even like listening to your music, starting with Brute Force and maybe even before, like Neo Tokyo and stuff like that, you have all of these ambience elements that become a much bigger part of your music. Like you have some black metal ambiences and like some big synthy pads. There is something in your music where it feels like it's like, I don't quite know how to describe it. It's just the way I feel it. But there is like this feeling of being the man and the machine, and it's just you being in front of the computer. And there is this very unique loneliness / nostalgia, which is kind of a bittersweet feeling that comes out of it.
Yeah, I think you describe it very well. And it's also something that obviously is hard to explain with words, really. I can see that it's what I'm doing with music. For me, it feels natural to tell those kind of emotions. I think I'm a pretty healthy guy. I'm not depressed or whatever. So it's not like I'm sad and I'm like an artist that nobody understands and I have to create sad music or whatever. But I think we all have this part of us that is a little bit, I don't know, maybe melancholic or nostalgic about the past or whatever. And when I think about my childhood, or even when let's say I watch a video of like a game that I used to play. I'm a lot into retro gaming, by the way. But let's say I watch a retro game video, I can feel this emotions. And when I listen to the soundtrack of the first Zelda game, you know, those sort of things, I can really feel this emotion that it's almost I want to go back to my childhood. And when I'm creating music, I think there's this part of me that is expressing itself. And it's not something that I will think about consciously. Like, it's not like I'm telling myself, okay, in this track, it will have this emotion. I don't know. It doesn't work like that for me. But it's something that I do naturally. And maybe it's about the fact that, you know, we all deeply inside ourselves miss our childhoods. Maybe, I don't know. That would be a very interesting thing to understand. But in a way, that's also, yeah, that's the kind of emotion that I am drawn to. And you mentioned the word loneliness, which is also very interesting because I was like when I was a teenager, I was emo or whatever, you know, I was alone all the time and I had almost no friends or whatever. And I was kind of feeling sad about it. I didn't have a sad childhood, you know, just to say it, but I wasn't the most popular kid around. And, you know, those things that when you're a teenager, they affect you in a way that sticks with you your whole life. So maybe now it's my way of expressing those emotions that I trapped inside myself. And I'm using nostalgia when I'm using synthwave, or sometimes I'm using dark black metal riffs to express that anger that is inside me. You know, I don't know if I really answered the question, but I'm trying to. I think it's hard to explain what kind of emotions are really into the music, because that's the whole point for me to make music. It's for it to explain it without me having to try to explain with words badly, you know.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know that the question can be answered, but I'm just wondering aloud. And I feel like in society, we see, take for example, the last album from Daft Punk, that was probably one of the most popular releases of the past decade, and it's called Random Access Memories. And for me, that's like the perfect title to describe this kind of thing that we all seem to feel, which is like this yearning for, it can be the 80s, it can be this kind of Blade Runner vibe that you actually referenced in the video clip for the former album of Boucle Infinie. And it can also be the early internet things. And actually, I don't know if you feel that as well. Maybe also I'm slightly younger than you, but I feel like in some way, I mean, it will sound exaggerated maybe, but I feel like the internet was kind of stolen from me, because when I was a kid and I was like on the internet doing crack me's or whatever in like my debugger, and I was going on all these like weird 2000 looking websites, I feel like many artists are trying to recreate that, because now it's everybody goes on the same websites. You know, it's very beautiful and curated. It's YouTube, it's Instagram, it's Facebook. And I feel like we have kind of lost this like amateur part of the internet. And I don't know if you feel that too.
Yeah, I definitely feel that as well. And I think we are missing this sort of raw, like DIY aspect that it used to be. And now it feels like it's so controlled by big companies or whatever. And it feels different, definitely. And yeah, I mean, when I think about the early internet days, in some ways I kind of want to get back to that, but in some other ways we have been making such, you know, huge advancements in terms of technology that now we're able to do like amazing things as well. So I don't know, I think for me in my opinion, there's a lot of nostalgia that is, if you were to come back to that time, you wouldn't feel the same about it. You know, you're just thinking about it in a way that feels good now because it was the past and you're only thinking about the good parts. But in a way, it's like a romantic version of what it actually used to be back then. That's just my opinion, and I don't know. And I think it's kind of cool as well, because it's cool to think about the past in this way, because it makes life better in a way, you know, to think, oh, it was better before. So it's almost like a glimpse of hope that things can go back to the way it was in a way. But yeah, it's I think I'm not an expert in those things, and that's a question that I wouldn't be able to really answer very well. But in my opinion, to summarize, I would say that we have this romantic vision of our past, and I think it's cool because it gives a lot of creative ideas. And we are seeing now, like you said, with Vaporwave and Synthwave and all those amazing subgenres. But in a way, it's a very romantic version of what it used to be. But it's cool. Now we have amazing sounding Synthwave stuff. So I think let's just embrace it.
Yeah, that's right. Maybe it's a bit like when you're away from home for a long time and you're thinking about all the stuff that you like about France, and then you land, you come in the airport and people start insulting you, you step in dog shit and someone almost runs over you. And then you realize that yeah, I mean, you know, like you did not, I mean, you missed a romanticized, idealized idea of what it means to be home. But then when you're actually back home after 2 days, you just want to leave again.
Yeah, that's a little bit like that. Yeah, and it's emphasized by the culture of, like, now we have like all this, the new Blade Runner movie, the whole synthwave scene. It makes it look better than it was